Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. We are Baltimore positive. We are positively doing a cup of Soup or Bowl all week long next week. So this week, we're actually doing some Super Bowl Radio Row conversations with some old friends. You'll hear from Joe Flacco. You're going to hear from Jamal Lewis, a whole bunch of old writers and coaches and different folks. This guest is a defending champion around here as a longtime NFL insider covering many different beats as well as the league itself. He is on the Pro Football Hall of Fame Voters Committee. That means many things to lots of fans. I think in reality, when I bring on these ladies and gentlemen that do this, as I'll be doing over the next couple of weeks to talk about Terrell Suggs and Marshall Yonda and Steve Smith and everything else, these are all people that have really been covering the game a long time. So I love having Jason Cole on as our defending champion. You can find him out on the interwebs. And any time that Stanford and Cal get together, he's usually in the middle of some sort of food fight with Amy Trask. How are you, my friend? It's been a while. We're like ships in the night. We only get together on the internet once or twice a year, and I usually call you when something happens with Lamar or Super Bowl week. But it's good to have you on. I still follow. And the NFL, even when they throw you out, you still sort of watch, right?
Everybody does. Doesn't matter whether you belong or whether you don't belong to the club. So yeah, I'm doing great. So thanks for asking.
Well, it's that time of the year where everybody licks their wounds except for Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady, right? What Mahomes has done, and we would always get into this back when I met you 20 years ago, of what does it mean that Tom Brady's in his fourth Super Bowl in 6 years, and eighth Super Bowl? Like, it starts to stack up, and you start to wonder whether Lamar, Burrow, or Josh Allen on the AFC side, let alone Herbert or Stroud or any of the rest of are going to break through, because the Chiefs have managed to put together a pretty special elixir here, even when they're not so good and only lose one game. Still pretty good, man.
Yeah, two games they lost. I mean, you got to count the last game of the season, even though that was an exhibition game for them. It's hard to explain. This is such a staggering accomplishment to get the three straight in and of itself. To have a chance to win three straight and do something that no team has ever done before in the Super Bowl era and hasn't done since the 60s with the Packers when they won three straight titles. It's a level of concentration and a level of will that very few humans are capable of. And we've seen guys like Brady do it. We've seen come close, but oh my God, what I've watched this season, because they're really not, from a statistical standpoint, they're not that great. Like what Baltimore did this year was far more impressive statistically. But when it comes to actually executing games and not making mistakes and doing things that get you the critical plays to get you through it, Kansas City is simply fabulous.
Well, part of that is Spagnuolo too. I mean, we talk so much about Mahomes. The defense, their defense shows up in ways when other teams' defenses don't show up, including the Bills being able to stop the Chiefs and get the ball back. Just in a general sense that your defense, these teams that win championships have a level of balance, and Belichick's defensive mind was always
Mhm.
behind everything Brady ever did, including taking the air out of the football in December,
Well,
which is a really good idea in the snow.
yeah, especially if you want to hold on to it more. Yeah, look, it is an amazing balance. And you talk about Spags. Spags is the perfect lieutenant. I often talk about that. Is you have to have a combination of head coach and coordinators that works in sync. And Spags and Andy Reid are about as perfectly synchronized as you could imagine between offensive play caller and defensive play caller, and how they run this team and how they're trying to operate it. And you could get into a long, deep discussion about philosophy, but those guys know what they want, what each wants to do for the other to protect each side of the ball.
Well, and then there was Eric Bieniemy, and the coaching tree of Andy Reid being this incredibly legendary thing, and all of it seeded in the disappointment of, I don't know which championship game you were at back in that era. I was always on the AFC side, but they lost some games at the Vet. They lost home NFC championship
Mm-hmm.
games, and Donovan McNabb and the game down in Jacksonville, and that his manifest destiny not fulfilled coming in from Green Bay and being a guy who was a quarterback coach. He'd never called an offense, right? Like as the head coach of the Eagles to be now mentioned with Shula, Landry, Lombardi, Belichick. We're getting into that sort of level
Paul Brown. We're getting into the
for
top
him.
five. Joe Gibbs, Paul Brown, Lombardi. Yes. If he stays another 4 years and he beats Shula's record, do you then give him the number one spot? If you care about numbers, that kind of thing.
He might win 3 championships the next 4 years too, if they can retool this.
He
Right?
might. I would again. I would say the level of focus that you need and the pressure that goes with it. I really think that we saw a lot of that this year play out with this team, and like it's just so hard to emotionally get high enough to win these games. Um, that it's really hard. It's just really, really hard to maintain. And I know that they went 15-2 during the regular season. They've won 2 playoff games now, so it's been a spectacular year. But if you really watch the way they played, it has been a struggle at times this year. It's been a very serious struggle for them. I mean, their offensive line is just not very good. They haven't made this easy, and I think that just wears on people after a while. And, they're going to have to replace Kelsey at some point in time, and they're going to have to do some other things. So maintaining this is not quite so easy, but you do start with the best coach and the best quarterback. And for right now, this is magnificent. It is just a really, truly thing. So worrying about what's going to happen in the next 3 to 4 years, they're going to be good. I don't know that they can be this good that long. God, this is really, truly something. I've never witnessed a team be this great over a 3-year stretch.
Well, part of it is they
And
don't make a lot of mistakes, right? In the big games.
they don't beat. Well, hey, look, I got a stat for you on this team. They stand to be only the second team in the Super Bowl era that was outgained on a per play basis. In other words, how far they moved the ball versus how far their opponents moved the ball. They were in the negative territory this year. That's only happened one time in the Super Bowl era, and that was the Patriots in 2001, which is historically a not very good team. That was Tom Brady's first championship team, right? This is before we thought Tom Brady was Tom Brady, right? And that he was all that special. We found out later what he really is, but it was all just sort of bubbling up early on. And that team was a sort of a ragtag bunch of guys who were kind of put together, 20 free agents, if you
It was a
remember
Tuck rule
correctly.
year, right? That was a Tuck game.
Yeah, it was the Tuck rule year. It was the great upset of the Rams. So, I look at this and I say, what they are doing right now is almost unheard of. And yes, it is a matter of they don't beat themselves. They don't do little things in games that hurt themselves. Like yesterday, they had 2 mistakes. The fumble when Mahomes left the ball just a little too long and Pacheco knocked it out of his hands. That was the one turnover. And then when Mahomes missed on a 2nd and 9 play when he stepped up in the pocket. I was really keeping track diligently. Those are the only 2 really obvious mistakes that they had in that game that hurt them in a significant way. So, yeah, they don't commit mistakes. They put a lot of pressure on their opponents to make every single play. And the Bills almost did it yesterday. They played an incredible game.
Jason Cole's our guest. He is a Pro Football Hall of Fame voter and a wise old soul when it comes to things NFL. I want to get to Lamar. We're going to get to Hall of Fame. We're going to do all that. But I want to get on to the Eagles for a minute because this is sort of replacing my radio row that if we were sitting in the convention center down in New Orleans, half hungover, trying to figure out which beignet we were going to have or what Emerald's place we're going to tonight for seafood, we would be talking about the Eagles as this is an amazing thing. It feels like 5 minutes ago it was Schwartz and that group there, and some members still sort of around, a half of them. But the Sirianni thing, 2 Super Bowls now, his thing with the fans, and he's kind of an outlier of a head coach in a way that we don't see him as the village genius in any way. And then Saquon Barkley and the genius of signing him in the offseason, as well as we'll get to Derrick Henry's genius in a minute as well, because we were all giving up on running backs. I'm sure somewhere in the last 10 years, you and I were talking about, well, running backs aren't cool anymore. Nobody gives them money. And all of a sudden, if the Eagles are going to win the Super Bowl, next week, It's going to be a big day for Saquon Barkley, and it's going to be about Kansas City not being able to stop that, right?
Pretty much. I mean, Saquon's had. I mean, aside from Derrick Henry, you know, this is this is an incredibly stunning year for him. I mean, 2,000 yards, everything that he did. The opening play, yesterday to get them kickstarted after it looks like Washington's going to control the tempo of the game. Then boom, like okay, you got your field goal. Have a good time. This is how we play here because we've got weapons. We have serious weapons in Philadelphia. I mean, they've got that trio to the two wide receivers, include make it four guys, make it Goddard, the two receivers, and Saquon. I mean, wow, that's an incredible group, and they added in a very good offensive line and a defense that's played stunning football. I mean, this is really a terrific team right now. I love the way they play. The one downside is that Jalen Hurts is just having an okay year, and I think he's been exposed quite a bit. It's going to be a real test for Kansas City, and it's going to be Spags is going to have his hands full trying to figure this out, and really trying to put a lot of pressure on Hurts to be the one to have to make decisions to beat them. Because if you can do that, if you can put the game in Hurts' hands and not in Saquon's hands, then you have a real shot against Philadelphia.
I've known Vic Fangio a long time, going back to Billick here and 5 minutes with Harbaugh, and
Mm-hmm.
they had their own wars of running the score up with his 5 minutes in Denver and all that. It is incredible that when the Ravens needed help, they reached to whoever the old man is, right? Let's bring Dean Pease back, let's bring Craig Madison back but like these old sage defensive guys, if they still have, and Spagnuolo's now one of them, right? There is
Mm-hmm. Sure.
something. Marvin Lewis once said to me, I think the second or third time that he was going to get fired in Cincinnati and survived it is we don't get dumber. We really do get smarter. We get better at this if we're good at this, everyone. And
Mm-hmm.
that would speak to Pete Carroll getting a gig, this week in Vegas. The Vic Fangio thing and them just planting him in and you talking about how incredible this defense is. Is there a Hall of Famer on that defensive unit?
On Philly,
Yeah.
um,
I mean,
well,
it's
look, Jalen Carter's in the beginning stages of what he has Hall of Fame talent. Darius Slay, maybe one day.
but on a man by man basis, I would take Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey, and Matabik on my team and saying, I got better play. I have better anchors. I didn't see the Eagles as being this good defensively that we would say they can win the Super Bowl next week, because they can win the Super Bowl next week.
Yeah, they could. I know. I thought this was the weak link for them last year. Their defense just fell apart in the second half of the season last year. So I thought they were better than this last year and underperformed. This year, they're probably overperforming a little bit, but especially when you consider the loss of Fletcher Cox. But they have a pretty deep collection of defensive linemen. If you want to give Howie Roseman credit for one thing, he's done some amazing things with that roster. He's made sure that he kept the depth on their defense on both lines, and then found the weapons on the outside on offense. So he's done a really magnificent job there. And so what you have is Fangio has this collection of talent walking in that's pretty sound. It's maybe not what you're talking about in Baltimore with some of the stars. I get that. But they have a rotation of guys along the defensive line who work really well.
A couple of these franchises, like San Francisco, have managed to flip coaches several times and make Super Bowls, where Pittsburgh, Baltimore, New England for a long time, now they're the Vrabel, and we'll see what they do there. But to keep that sort of stability going, the Eagles, dude, they were signing Sam Bradfords and giving quarterbacks money and using ones on the kid from North Dakota, and like they've done all of these really unorthodox weird things. They gave all this money to a running back. They hired a head coach in Sirianni that was not hot anything, that I don't know that a lot of owners would have said, I want that guy to be my coach, knowing what Johnny Bravo looks like. I mean, the guy went after the fans 15 weeks ago in Philly of all places, but here we are
But
again.
that works for him. That works for him, and and they won a championship with Doug Peterson having sort of um, a kind of meteoric one season and then kind of falling apart. And you know, look, they are different. They're unconventional in terms of how they manage the team. I get that, but if you look at sort of the formation of the team in terms of fundamental stuff, again, offensive line and getting weapons, they've made it so that you can plug and play at certain spots that you normally can't plug and play at. And you can plug and play a little bit at quarterback for them, and you can plug and play at coach a little bit for them. And it works. It worked, 3 years ago when they got to the Super Bowl with Sirianni and they had a nice group. Then they went backwards a little bit last year, and now they plugged in the right guys this year, and it's working again. But Sirianni, to me, Sirianni gives them that sense of chutzpah or gall that you kind of need to have in order for a team to really believe in itself. And this, I think it doesn't work long term. I would rather have the Andy Reid approach, which is very steady. But you can't always have that. Sometimes you need to have a guy who, is ready to flip off the fans and go to war with them, to give your locker room a little bit of energy and a little bit of chutzpah.
Jason Cole has chutzpah. If we could spell that with a CH. All right, to
very
the Ravens.
Good, very good, go. Very good for a goy. Very good.
Yeah, I'm trying. I dated a Jewish girl, so I tried. Yeah. So for Lamar and for the Ravens fans, and we'll get to Mark Andrews and like all of that, and even Derrick Henry. What do you say? Because I didn't talk to you last Monday, in the aftermath of the Bills game, but they might have had the most talent, and maybe it didn't get driven that way. They made a lot of mistakes, a lot of penalties, a lot of everything, a lot of MVP, a lot of all of that.
Stay the course.
Go ahead, stay the course. What does that mean?
But not everybody gets Patrick Mahomes. Okay, you don't get to have that guy who's perfect. You have a great player. You surrounded him with the right talent. Particularly Derrick Henry, learn the lesson that between his second year in the league when he had Ingram going so strong, and they were surprising people a little bit, but they had that power back, and now they have a power back again. That you need to have that complementary system of a power back with a guy who's got the kind of quickness to create problems on the edge, right? And that's what Lamar can do with their running game. So make sure you have that. Because you don't know how long Derrick Henry is going to last, but you're going to milk Derrick Henry as long as you can. He's the perfect complement to Lamar. Lamar has done an incredible job over the span of his career, becoming a much more efficient passer. He's a better passer than I ever thought he would become. Give him all the credit in the world. He's done it, but he still makes one or two mistakes. So that's just been the story. The championship game last year against Kansas City, the fumbles and the interceptions. This year, one interception, one fumble, bad interception early in the game, bad fumble. And you can, he's not the only guy in that game who's a villain. Mark Andrews had a rough day. Okay. So there's a lot of blame to go around, but they still should have won the game despite all the mistakes that they had. They still were right there. Don't panic about this team. Don't sit there and say, oh my God, all is lost. We'll never get there, because it may only happen once, in Lamar's career. But that's what happens. That's what happens in this league. Sometimes even great players only get one shot, but they have everything going the right way. They've unfortunately wasted two of the greatest years in the history of any team the last 2 years. Their yards per play differential was dominant. They have the right formula. They built the right way to win, get yourself to the playoffs, put yourself in position. They just happen to be playing at a time when Kansas City doesn't make mistakes. And so, stay the course with what you've got. There's not a lot you're going to be able to do aside from the Chiefs having some down years.
I know you find this hard to believe with all my positivity, but I was raised by a whole bunch of old curmudgeonly sports writers, jaded. And we just lost one of them, Phil Jackman, my favorite curmudgeon of all time, a few months ago. I'm going to let you be the curmudgeon if you need to be, because you're the old soul around here. You have been in as many locker rooms as I, give or take a couple, I would think, in my years of hockey and baseball and all of that. I've been in exits. I wrote in my column last week, I was in the locker room when Bob Mason gave up the goal in the greatest hockey game ever played and went over to his locker. I was the first person to ask Billy Cundiff, and in Baltimore lore, the Armando Benitez home run given up to Tony Fernandez in 1997 was sort of the last chance the Orioles have really had to get it to go to the World Series. So I've been in all of these locker rooms as a 41-year journalist now, since I was 15 years old. The Mark Andrews thing last week, where they drop the ball and then they don't come to the podium. In the old world, we'd say, is he going to talk? Is he going to talk? Is he going to talk? We didn't have to ask that back in the day, like just in a general sense. If you were the goalie in hockey, if you were the pitcher in baseball, if you were the Bill Buckner and the ball went between your legs, whatever it was, there was an expectation that you didn't let your teammates have to do it on your behalf. There's that. And then there's just the general decorum of what it is, and that too much is given, much is expected. They're making $16 million as a tight end. I took a little umbrage, and I feel bad for the guy. I mean, again, I felt bad for Billy Cundiff when I was asking him what happened on the kick, but I'm there. And Lee Evans, what happened when you dropped the ball? These are all Baltimore references, of course, but give me where you are on all of this, and maybe you think I'm the curmudgeon. I don't know.
Look, it's not the best look in the world. But Dwayne Starks, if you remember, did that one game in Baltimore. But Dwayne Starks at least came to the guys and said, look, guys, I just need the day. He at least said it to them, to their face. I can't talk right now. I can't remember what game it was, but I remember it happened.
Probably the Jimmy Smith game, probably.
Yeah, and he came to those guys and said, "Look, guys, I can't talk today. Give me a day." And he did talk the next day.
Kevin Byrne came out on behalf of Ray Lewis after the Peyton Manning game in 06, a division game that was in Baltimore. We lost to the Colts. Ray was sobbing in the trainer's room, and Kevin Byrne came out and said, "Look, Ray, Ray's accountable. Just not in the next 20 minutes. It's not going to happen right. It's not happening tonight. I'll get him out. But like there was that sort of thing that's 20 years ago, man. I mean, times have changed, bro.
It does.
Right?
Look, it doesn't happen very often, and athletes are more out there than they've ever been because of social media. I don't know that Andrews is one of those guys, but they're exposed and they're talked about more than they ever have been. So I don't worry about it as much as I used to. But I would like it if guys would, at least say, like, not take 4 days. What did it take him? 4 days before?
And it was an Instagram. It wasn't,
it wasn't a mea culpa. It wasn't, hey, look, guys, I owe you 10 or 15 minutes to answer the questions, right? But like that would be nice. That would be nice.
I had a PR director, two PR directors reached me. Both of them, I'm not going to out them, but they reached to me. They read my piece, whatever. Several head coaches in the league read my piece. And because I sent it and said, where are you on this? Am I wrong? And none of them were like, you're wrong. They were more along the lines, and the PR people thinking, and one of these coaches was an old PR guy as well, said, he's only making it worse on himself. And I'm thinking, well, you've never really met the modern media, because there are no attack dogs in Baltimore, even though Chad Steele thinks I'm one of them somehow. But like if this happened in New York or Philadelphia or Chicago, it would really be Denver really be a difficult way.
Yeah, but Aaron Rodgers happened in New York, and he wasn't really called on the carpet in a lot of the things that he did either. So we don't really live in that time, because guys can kind of pick and choose where they want to go with the media right now and still get their message out. So I don't like it. I'm a little bit more forgiving of it because of the age that we live in. We just live in this time. But yeah, I think that the guys are doing themselves more of a disservice than otherwise. It's sort of like at the end of the national championship game between Notre Dame and Ohio State, where after the game, some of the Notre Dame guys are swearing at reporters who are asking questions. It's because those guys have never been in that environment, right? They've never had reporters in the locker room asking them questions in a tough moment, because the way that college works is they bring them all to the podium and they have their time to cool off, and they everything is very packaged and prepared so that they are told how they should react. It's not raw. And what we want in this environment is we want the raw reaction. We want to know how people really truly feel. But sometimes how guys really truly feel is that they're so disconsolate they can't talk. And I get that. Like what is Mark Andrews just saw the ball go through his hands. A ball that he should have caught. And he knows what was on the line there. He knows all the work that went into it. I know how he feels. Now, I'm disappointed that he didn't talk directly to me as a reporter if I'm one of those guys.
There used to be a professionalism that was implied, right, that is no longer implied, including, and I'm going to bring this up, the owner doesn't come out anymore. The owner hasn't come out since he got pissed off about Ray Rice getting outed when they had no integrity and lied and had everybody lie about what happened in a glass elevator. The owner has disappeared. So like there is no accountability in that way from the top down to say, owner took $600 million of civic money to throw you and everybody else out of the press box and put them up in the little Kevin Byrne little press box in the corner now. And so there is the accountability of all of it has gone away, Jay. I mean, it really has.
Well, because media is not as powerful as it used to be. It's too segmented off, and there aren't newspapers the way there used to be newspapers. People who can sway public opinion that you have to pay attention to. That's the reality of life, right? Like that's just the power of the media is much more disparate.
The power of your media is to vote for Hall of Fame, right? So we talk about these moments is that, Hall of Fame players come to the podium when they win or when they lose. And my point to the Mark Andrews thing is if you had won, you'd have been at the podium. And that should be a drop the mic, that there's a level of expectation.
Look, I get what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with it. But I also recognize that in this era of media, there isn't the kind of leverage to force people to do that. And even in the old era of media, there were moments in time when guys were just like they were too over the edge that they could not respond. And again, Dwayne Starks is one of them, Ray Lewis that you bring up. These moments have happened in the past. Let's not pretend that it's never happened.
I had McAllister run out the back door. I mean, in a regular season game, but not when the season's on the line. You know what I mean?
Guys do it, and then what they should do, if they're right, is they should show up and they should face the music. And Andrews hasn't done that, and it's really more to his detriment than it is to ours. As you pointed out.
I agree with that. Jason Cole's here. Last thing, Hall of Fame. Suggs, Yanda, Steve Smith on the Baltimore side. 49 voters. Used to all get in a room, drink coffee, and yell at each other. Still do that sort of in a Zoom environment. I think on our end, I've been asked to rate them and think where I would put them. And I thought Suggs would be the first of the three to get in because of positionally and where it is and all that. I have been told, no, the guard will be easier to get in, certainly than the wide receiver. You're the guy in the room, so you tell me.
Well, I did my survey of this where I surveyed 419 former players, some current players who've been around a while. But former players, coaches, executives, or some combination thereof. Suggs was, I think, finished 5th in that ballot. I can't remember. I don't have it right in front of me. He finished top 5. So Suggs has the defensive numbers that are sort of, will get him in. Smith has a reputation. He finished very close behind Reggie Wayne and a little further down behind Torrey Holt in that survey in terms of what pecking order you would put those 3 guys in. So I think Smith will get in eventually. It's going to take a couple of years. And I think you're going to have to get Holt. You're going to have to get Wayne into the Hall of Fame because they've been waiting longer. It's just
what about Hines Ward? I would have put him in ahead of either one of them.
No, not yet. So let's not get off topic here.
But Hines was in and now is out, right, of the 15.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think Hines has ever been in the 15 that
Oh,
I can
okay. All
remember.
right. Fair enough.
So,
Okay.
but Hines is a really interesting case, and a lot of people have a lot of respect for him, but he hasn't made the 15. And the last one, Yonda, when I looked at these 15 guys, the guy with the best resume is Yonda. Of all the 15 players, you want to talk about peak level of performance, continuous, all pros, Pro Bowls, all the things that really differentiate you as an offensive lineman. He's the best offensive lineman. He might have the best he's the best offensive lineman in this group. That's number one. Number two, he might be the best resume of all 15 guys, and that includes Luke Kuechly, Eli Manning, Vinatieri. Go on down the line, right? He is, as one other voter said, if there's a John Hanna in this group, and this was a private discussion I was having at one point, if there's a John Hanna in this group, it's Yanda. Okay. So Yanda's going to get in, at some point. I don't want to reveal the results of what we've done or what we haven't done at this point in time, but I do believe that Yanda's going to get in at some point in time, whether it's this year or whether it's in the future. So I think all three of them have great cases. I don't know what order they're going to go in exactly. My guess would be that Suggs would go in first because he has the compelling sack numbers, but that could change very easily.
Jason Cole is here. He doesn't change his mind too easily. He's been covering the National Football League for a long, long time. Miss you. Wish we could get together. I don't have. I'm done. I'm done with everything. I was going to ask you, why the Giants couldn't win with Saquon Barkley, but I'll save that for the offseason. How's life? Good. You going to the game next week? What's happening here? You still a Super Bowl
I'm
goer?
good. I'm good. I'm not going to the game, and that's fine because I'd rather just sit at home and watch the game and have a Super Bowl party. So I'm fine that way. I've done 35 of them, so I'm good. I'm good where I am. I work hard at the Super Bowl at the. I'm sorry, work hard at the Hall of Fame stuff. Do work at the 33rd team and do a lot of freelance stuff. So I'm in great shape right now.
Well, I always
So
love visiting with you, man.
yeah,
I run so I'm getting thinner and thinner on people that are old schoolers like you that can come on here and give me the kind of depth that I like to talk about with football. So I appreciate it. You're always a great
yeah.
guest, and I hope we're in the same room eating something good sometime soon because it feels like I miss all of you guys. The sports writing guys that I knew for 25 years. We got to figure out reason to get together. That's not a funeral. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, funerals not a good reason to get together, but no, I gotta say, you know, what I've watched with the Ravens the last 2 years, there's been some really magnificent football that just has not ended the right way for them. So when I say stay the course, and to people who are probably really really frustrated with that team, I really mean it. You guys stay the course with what they're doing. And people, I'm sure there are people who are crazy out there who want to dump Lamar or dump Harbaugh or do all these things, and make giant changes all over the place. I think that Steve Bisciotti, even though he's maybe not showing up the way he needs to show up and putting his face out there in public, I know he's a kind of a private guy, but he should show up every once in a while. Even if he's not doing that, he's doing the right thing by staying the course and creating that sort of Pittsburgh culture of respect for the head coach. That's really important to running any organization. I think consistency of approach and making the coach an authority figure is really, really important for them, even if it seems like it's not working the way you want it to work.
I did a half an hour. You wouldn't even talk about the Washington program 38 miles away where they are really recruiting and they've got a kid. There is this thing happening in my community now where the Ravens haven't had to try hard for a quarter of a century because the Orioles have stunk. Now the Orioles have transplanted. Obviously, the Washington football team is
God,
transplanted.
the Orioles are fun, man. The Orioles, what an organization. Now they got to they got to be a little bold and make a trade for Dylan Cease or somebody like that, and make it work. But that's a really fun organization. So it's good. It's a good time in Baltimore and for Washington. So if you want to count the Beltway total, the fact that Dan Snyder is no longer in the NFL, number one, is a great thing. Number two, you have you have a whole breath of fresh air between management, the head coach, and the quarterback. I mean, that's really a special thing that we watched in Washington. So it's back to a good time in the Beltway for football and for all sports.
Dan Quinn makes it impossible for me to hate them anymore. So, I mean, I almost like found myself cheering for them in some way. They're my NFC team. Never an Eagles fan around here, though. You know that. This was a tough one. Chiefs.
There's only so far you can go. There's only so far you can go with peace and love, and it doesn't go as far as Philly. Is that
Every
what we're
man
saying?
has its limits. Well, I was a season ticket holder up there for 6 years during the Buddy Ryan and the Rich Kotite era, the Randall Cunningham era, the Baldinger era. So I sat up in section 721, row one. You'll find this hard to believe. All the ticket stubs, we were in the family section at the vet. he is Jason Cole. I'll be telling some old stories around here. We're WNST AM 1570 Towson, Baltimore. We never stop talking Super Bowl and a cup of Super Bowl for our charity next week. We're Baltimore Positive. Stay with us.